there! Thank you so much for being here again. I'm Stacy James with Just Spoolin Around, and I'll be demonstrating how to work the elongated honeycomb cable stitch pattern in a small swatch. This stitch pattern lies flatter than the regular honeycomb cable. Thus, our yarn goes a bit farther while maintaining this lovely texture. The elongated honeycomb cable requires an even number of stitches in multiples of 4, in addition to 2 edges for each side. The edge stitches are not part of the stitch pattern, just those in between, okay? In addition to the even number of stitches in multiples of 4, plus another 4 stitches required for the foundation chain, there is also a setup row, which will be row 1, along with a 5-row repeat, rows 2 through 6. These rows will be repeated until the desired length is reached. Then, we just bind off purlwise to close up our stitches. In segment 2, I'll work the foundation chain along with the first row, which is the setup, so it's not part of the 5-row repeat. I'll be demonstrating this stitch pattern by working a small swatch, running the stitch multiple once, so we'll need 8 stitches total for the foundation chain. So we'll have our 2 edge stitches on either side and the 4 stitches between for our stitch pattern. Now, if I were to work 2 multiples of 4, my stitch count would be 12. That would be 2 stitches on either side for 4, plus the 8 stitches between, which is figured out by working or multiplying 2 by 4. So that gives us our 8, and the 8 plus 4 would be 12, okay? Now, we'll begin by coming up about 4 inches from the tail end to work an 8-stitch foundation chain. If you need help working the foundation chain, there's a link provided above, and it's a great beginner's guide to hand knitting. So here we have 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now, let's make sure we have 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, I'm going to make that last stitch just a bit smaller. Now, let's turn the foundation chain over to work row 1, the setup row, through the back of these humps running right through the middle, so we have a pretty braid to match the bind-off chain. Now, the first 2 stitches on every row will always be knit 1, then purl 1. Then we work our 4-stitch multiple up to the last 2 stitches of the row. Those last 2 stitches will always be purl 1, then knit 1. This gives us symmetry along the edges. Now let's get started. We'll skip the first stitch, which will be our first edge stitch on row 1. So it would be a knit 1. So we'll need to purl 1 in that second chain or first hump to cover our 2 edge stitches. Now for the stitches in our stitch multiple, we're going to purl. So let's purl the next 4 stitches up to the last 2 edge stitches, which we will purl, then knit. We have just completed the foundation chain and setup row, row 1, for our 5-row repeat stitch pattern. In segment 3, I'll work rows 2 through 6, which will form the elongated honeycomb cable stitch pattern when repeated. We'll start row 2, which is the first row of our 5-row repeat, by first knitting, then purling our edge stitches. Next, we begin working the stitches for our stitch pattern. We'll be crossing stitches on this row to start our cable work, and the first set of stitches is this cable to front. This tells us that we have 2 stitches total to work in our cable, and it's a front crossing cable. Now, we always skip the first half of our total cable stitches, so we're going to skip just this 1 stitch. Since we have a front crossing cable, that next set of cable stitches must be crossed in front of the skipped cable stitches. So let's cross this stitch over the skipped stitch to knit it. Then we'll come back to the skipped stitch to knit that as well. We've just completed the cable to front. Next up is the cable to back. This tells us that we again have 2 stitches total to work in our cable, and this time it's a back crossing cable. We always skip that first half of our total cable stitches, so we're going to skip just the 1 stitch And since we have a back crossing cable, that next set of cable stitches must be crossed behind the skipped cable stitches. So let's cross this stitch behind the skipped stitch to knit it. Then come back to the skipped stitch to knit that as well. We've just completed the cable 2 back. We would continue working the cable 2 front and cable 2 back up to the last 2 stitches of the row if we were running the stitch multiple more than once. However, we're already at our last 2 stitches, so we're just going to purl, then knit to complete the row. Rows 3 through 5 are easy peasy. All we do is knit up to the last 2 stitches for each row. So to begin, we'll knit, then purl the 2 edge stitches. Then we're just going to knit up to the next 2 edge stitches. Once we've completed our knit stitches, we'll complete the row by purling, then knitting those 2 edge stitches, and row 3 is now complete. For row 4, we'll do the exact same thing. So let's knit, then purl. Now we'll knit up to the last 2 edge stitches, and then purl and knit the last 2 edge stitches. Now row 4 is complete. We'll do this one last time for row 5. So knit, then purl the 2 edge stitches, then knit up to the last 2 edge stitches on the row, then purl and knit. Row 5 is now complete. Easy peasy. Now on row 6, which is the 5th and final row of our 5-row repeat, we'll be crossing stitches again to close up the honeycomb on our cable. We start by knitting, then purling our edge stitches. Our first set of stitches is a cable 2 back this time. This tells us we have 2 stitches total in our cable, and it's a back crossing cable. So let's skip that first stitch, cross the next stitch behind the skipped stitch and knit it. Then return to the skipped stitch and knit that. Next, we have the cable 2 front. So we know we have 2 stitches total in our cable, and it's a front crossing cable. We'll skip that first cable stitch, cross the next cable stitch in front of the skipped one, and knit it. Then knit that skip stitch to complete the cable. Cable 2 back and cable 2 front is to be repeated up to the last 2 stitches of the row. Then purl and knit those last 2 edge stitches to complete row 6 and the final row of our 5-row repeat. Now repeat rows 2 through 6 to your desired length to form the pattern. Then bind off purlwise to achieve that symmetry. I really hope you love this stitch and found the instructions easy to follow. If you have questions or need any help, please do not hesitate to comment below or email me at support@justspoolinaround.com. Thanks again so much for watching. Peace out. All you hand knitting lovies, until next time.